Hello and welcome to an Everyday Canines video. In this episode we're talking about numbers and the important things you need to know about numbers on a course. So I've set up a sequence of numbers here going up to 10. And I know it looks a bit complicated at the moment and there's numbers in different places, but what we're going to do, we're going to break it down and we're going to look at the different positions of the numbers and what they mean and how you should be reading them as you go around a course. This will be very important as you get more advanced in your training and you might attend training days or classes where there's numbers set out. And of course, if you then decide to pursue competitions, then you're going to need to know what the numbers are. And then you might also find training plans online or that I have shared that you want to set up, but the numbers are in a certain way and you're not sure what that means. So these are all important things to look at, and we're going to break it down and explain all rules relating to numbers and agility. Let's start with the basics. How many numbers can you have on a course? Okay, in Kennel Club regulations, you can have a minimum of 16 numbers, a maximum of 20. What that means is that you are effectively doing either 16 or 20 obstacles. In other countries and sometimes in other organisations, they have more numbers. I think some places they can go up to 25 or more. And on some training days, people will put out bigger courses just to test your skills. But that's what you need to know. If you're entering a Kennel Club competition or an independent show that's running under Kennel Club rules, you will expect to see a minimum of 16, a maximum of 20. And of course, you can have any number in between that. So you can have 17, 18, 19. Fairly obviously, but it's not always that obvious, you'd be surprised. You start on 1. Usually there will also be a board next to this that says start on it, just to make it really obvious this is number 1. I have been asked in the past whether when there's a number there you have to take the obstacle on the side the number sits. And yes, you do. There are some exceptions, we'll get to them, but in this instance our number 1 is set there. That means our dog will start somewhere around here and they will be jumping over the jump in this direction. And then we look and we say, well, number 2 is over there. So our dog will now be going in this way to number 2. Fairly straightforward, fairly logical, but you'd be surprised sometimes people, they're not 100% sure. So that means that these 2 jumps, the dog is taking them face on. The front of the jump, they're going straight over. So now if we add number 3 into the mix, place number 3 here. Now what this tells me is when I've done this jump, I'm going to be turning back on myself and taking number 3 in this direction. Again, we're following the order of the numbers 1, 2, 3. This number is here and I've got it facing towards me, so I know I've got to take it this way. So when I'm walking the course, I'm looking at this and going, I don't want my dog to go straight over that jump. For a start, they might find that tunnel on the dog walk. I'm going to want them to turn back on themselves so they can get to number 3. Now, you'll notice that this is our start jump. We are going back over our start jump. You can do that. But the first time I saw that in a competition, I thought someone had got it wrong. I thought, no, there can't be a number on the start jump. Because if you think in a competition, you're going to have those pillars here or something strapped here that will do the timing. Those systems are clever enough, they can adjust them so that they know that they don't switch off when the dog goes back over it, say, the second time. So now I've got number 4 out. So we've gone 1, we've turned back on ourselves, done 3, and now we've got to go up there again. To be fair, this is probably not something you'd see very often on a course, but it's for example purposes. So you'll notice my numbers are set either side. They could be set like this. They could do it like that, or you can have them set either side. And of course we can have multiple numbers on here. As long as there's another obstacle between this jump, you could do this a dozen times. It could be a course that was set up, theoretically, you could do that jump, that jump, that jump, that jump till you'd used up 16 numbers. You wouldn't, but you could. So the numbers are here, and what the important thing to realise is that you are still doing them in order. So even though you've got 2 and 4 on here, you're still doing them in that order. You're still doing 3 before 4. So now I'm going to move this jumper. We've got 5. It was facing us, so it would have been a straight over. But I'm now going to be mean and move it that way. Now we're up to 3 numbers on this obstacle. 2 are facing this way. What does this number now mean? Well, it means that my dog has to jump the way the number is facing, the way the number is telling me. So I'm not going straight over, going round the back, because that number is telling me my dog has got to take this jump pole from this angle. So if I'm coming from here, it's quite obviously got to be round the back. So now I've got number 6 set out and I've set it next to my weave poles. And yet again, it's telling me where the judge wants me to enter the weave poles. Now we've done our weave training, we've looked at the videos, we know we always enter the weaves on our left-hand side. So you're saying to me, well, how have we got to worry about that number as long as we know the weaves are next? Supposing, instead of it being there, it was here. This would now tell me that I've got to go around, in fact it probably would be like this, but it could be there. This now tells me that instead of going in that entrance, they want me to take the weaves from this side. You're obviously going to be seeing that on more advanced courses, and usually they will set them up so they're like that, say, so that you can see, oh, the number's facing that way, they want me to go that way. So you mustn't assume that just because the number is there, you've got to take the weaves at a certain side. Another thing to bear in mind with the weave pole numbers is look where it is. Whether I put it there, whether I put it there, whether I balance it on here, it's in the way. When your dog comes to compete, after you've all had time to walk the course and memorise it, before anybody steps up to the line and starts going, this number will be removed. So there'll be no number on those weave poles. If there is a number, you can point it out to the judge and say, excuse me, you've left your number on your weave poles. So this number will not be here when you're running. That's important to remember because people sometimes, they learn to read the numbers as they go. If you've got a quick dog, you don't stand a chance of doing that, but people do. And then that can throw them when there's a number missing. But it is just part of the safety regulations that this number has to go so that nobody will fall over. I mean, you know, you might say, well, why can't they put it out here? Well, trust me, I've nearly fallen over a number that was out here. I've got a video actually where there was a number set out and I actually, without even realising it, I hurdled it, and shortly after the judge removed that number. So it is something that will usually is just completely taken away. But for the time being, for the sake of our course, we're leaving it here. Another thing to bear in mind with the weaves, you can only do a maximum of 12 weaves in a course. Here I have 6 weaves. That means I could do these weaves twice. So say I put another number up here, say I went up here, did that jump, I could come back and do these weaves again. But I could do them no more than that. Couldn't do them another set. And if they're a full set of 12, then I will only do them once in the course layout. There are some special classes and other organisations, but this is what we're going by, Kennel Club rules. And under Kennel Club rules, you can only do a maximum of 12 weave poles. Right, so we'll move on to our next obstacle, and now things are starting to get interesting. Now we're up to number 7, and look where I've put it. I've put it on this jump, but it's here, it's sitting at the side. This is not something you see that often, and I think it was several years before I saw it, and I had to ask what it was. What this means is that you can choose which side of the jump you take. So on all the other cases, the judge has chosen the side for you. They've said, this is the side I want you to take it, and if you take it a different way, you're eliminated. But in this instance, the judge is giving you an option. They're saying you can either come from those weave poles and come behind the jump, or you can come from those weave poles and go this side of the jump. It's just something to bear in mind, and it's always, because of the way numbers are, it is always worth, if you see this on a course and you're not sure, just double check with a judge that's in the right place, because I have seen instances where numbers have been like this and you're like, is that meant to be, or is it meant to be like that and someone's put it out bad, or it's got knocked when someone's walking? So if you're not sure, check. But that is what that means. That's the only time you can choose which side of the jump you take. And you may find that one angle is actually way better than the other anyway, so that it doesn't really make much difference, and most people go the same way. But sometimes it's interesting. I've set number 8 next to my tunnel, and it's near the tunnel entrance. So again, what the judge is saying, or whoever set this course up, is that I want you to take this end of the tunnel. Straightforward. And again, much like the weave poles, we can alter that. We can put this number here. So even though this number is here, and you know that's the entrance, you go, oh well, the number's there and the obstacle's here. Nope, it's not that entrance. They want you to go into this entrance because the number is sitting near this entrance. A tunnel is another of the obstacles that you can do multiple times. There is no limit to how many times you could do it in a course. It just depends how many times it's set up. Certain organisations have special courses where you have multiple tunnels. Again, you just have to have an obstacle between the tunnel you've just done and doing it again. But that could be another tunnel. You can go tunnel to tunnel, no problem. But then we have something that gets a bit interesting if we shuffle this number again. So I've set up number 9 on this jump, and there's a 10 over here. So we imagine the dog's gone through the tunnel there. It's now going to come over this jump. That is straightforward because the number is sitting on the wing, and we know that means we've got to take it this way. It's this number that gets interesting, number 10, because it's set in the middle of the tunnel. And when it's set in the middle of the tunnel, it means you can choose which end of the tunnel you want to do. In this scenario, depending on where I wanted to go next, I would perhaps come here because my dog's come out of the tunnel, and I'd say, oh, I can pick my dog up here, send him round this wing, and because I've got an option, I might actually send them into that tunnel or entrance, or I might turn, send them into this tunnel entrance. So it's just giving you a choice. You can choose which do I think would be better for my dog. You see this more commonly than you do see options on a wing. This is quite a frequent thing you'll see. You don't see the options on the wing very often. Sometimes it's set up so on a course, if there is a tunnel where both ends are quite obvious to the dog, they put it on baby courses so that you can choose either end, so that if your dog did pick the wrong end, it's not a big deal. But that's the thing to know about that. And I will say, much like with the wings, just always double check if it's not obvious. If it says is here, it might be worth checking it and saying, is that meant to be in the middle, or is that just a very badly placed 10 for that entrance? Because it happens, people put it out, things get knocked and blown. So if you're ever in doubt, just ask someone, the ring party, the judge, they'll be happy to help you. Well, so that is something to do. Okay, next we're going to have a look at numbers on contact equipment. So before we go any further, just let's say this is not part of that other course we looked at. Please don't think, oh, she's given us a course and I'll try it, and try and set up that tunnel line to this dog walk, because whichever way end you come out of, it's not a nice angle onto the dog walk. So imagine this is a completely separate course, but we're starting on 1 again. What I want to talk to you about is how contact equipment can be numbered in a course. Now, first off, we know that they always have to be a straight entry. So for instance, if my dog was coming from where you're looking at me, there's no way I could have this number down that end and be asking the hander to take my dog all the way around to that end, like we could do with weaves and tunnels. Not possible. They have to enter straight on. This is why it tends to be easier to find where the contacts come into a course, because you can say, well, I've got to be over that jump to get to that contact, so you can find it. When judges are setting courses, there's different ways they'll put the numbers on the obstacle. Some judges like to put it on the plank, so it's really obvious, even up here, so people can see it really clearly. Obviously that has to be removed when you run the course. Other judges will set it down here. The hazard here is obviously it could be tripped over. So sometimes what judges do is they might have set it there when you walked it, and then they might just tuck it in, or tuck it like this so you can still see it, but it's more out of the way. Or it might be set to the side, again, so you can still see it, but you aren't going to fall over it. This also applies to the A-frame. You will perhaps see the number positioned on the A-frame like this, and then it'll be gone when you run it. Sometimes also the numbers are slipped onto the crossbeam, so they just sit there. Again, they'll always be positioned on the side the judge wants you to take the obstacle. So it's always obvious which side you want to take. In courses, you only take the contact equipment once. You can take it from both directions with the dog walk and the A-frame, but you would only take it once, except there are occasional exceptions when an item is missing from a course, so you can remove a seesaw, say, and do 2 A-frames, but that's a very rare exception. I've only seen it at independent shows, though I have been told it can happen at KC shows. The last obstacle to think about when it comes to numbers is the seesaw. The seesaw obviously can only be taken in one direction. So the number will be set at that base of the seesaw, and it has to be a straight entry onto it. Again, most often when the course is running, the judge usually takes the number away because it's difficult to find a place around the seesaw where they can put the number safely. So quite often the judge will simply remove it so it's not a hazard, or they'll try and tuck it underneath so that people can't fall over it. Just something to bear in mind when you're walking these courses. If you do heavily rely on numbers, there is always the chance a certain number might not be there, and that can sometimes throw you. So it might just be something to bear in mind. You can't 100% rely on them. That is pretty much everything you need to know about a course. Last thing to say is the finish. How do you know it's the finish? Well, generally, at the course, there will be a sign on it that says finish. It'll be like these, but slightly bigger, that says finish on it. And of course, it will have the timing struts on it. So when in doubt, you look for the timing struts and you go, well, that must be the finish. In fact, one of my dogs actually learnt what timing struts were, and if he decided I'm done with this course and I want my reward, he'd leave and pick the timing equipment and go, well, I'll leave, I know that one. So that is what you need to know. It is straightforward once you get the idea of it. It's just that sometimes when you're first entering and looking at all these numbers, they do like, oh my word, how am I going to cope? But it is straightforward once you get the idea of it. And having numbers out does help you to walk courses, even if you're just in training. I hope that's made sense to you, and I hope you've enjoyed this Everyday Canines video. And if you have, you might like to subscribe to our channel, and you can check us out on Facebook and Instagram. And I hope to see you all again very, very soon.